Welcome back to another Mailbag episode. This is Mailbag episode number 2. Now, just to let you know, on the last one I said maybe I should put this into a podcast playlist. I'm going to do that. Even though these videos aren't super long, you'll find them in the Geeky Nerdy Techy podcast playlist. And if you want to listen to future or previous versions, I'll link up the playlist in the cards. I thought, why not? I don't have an official podcast, and if I need to just ramble on for 30 minutes on another video, I can plonk it in here as well. So I'm going to answer some questions I saw in the comment section, and I've categorized everything in this video to pertain to camera equipment, because I figure, you know, if you're not into camera gear and I start talking about audio equipment or lighting or something, then, you know, people will just tune out. People will just tune out. So I thought, why not? Let's just categorize everything for each particular Q&A. So this one will relate mostly to the camera questions that I've seen come in, as I'm mostly creating camera content these days, at least anyway, but I do have other stuff on the way. So let me find the list of questions. The first question here is from Iron Man Peter. He asked, would you today buy the S5IIX again or go for the smaller Lumix S9? Now, I'm going to frame this in two separate ways. So first up, if you're someone who's doing YouTube content like this, or you're a filmmaker and you want the camera to run in any situation indefinitely, the S5IIX is the way to go. Now, this camera has never overheated on me. It's never shown me a warning, and I've shot up to 40 degrees Celsius with this camera out in the field, and it just continues to run. The S5IIX is also better in the studio because I'm running it with the XLR adapter right now, which is something that the S9 isn't able to do. It doesn't have a hot shoe mount. It's got a dummy shoe mount, and this allows me to get professional audio without having to do anything. This is just recorded audio directly to the camera. I'm also running my S5IIX out into an external monitor right now, which on some cameras can make them overheat sooner. And this is one of those cameras. So if you plan on using the HDMI port a lot, we get a full-size HDMI port on the S5IIX. And I absolutely love this camera. I like it enough that I don't think I'll be upgrading to the latest releases of S1 Mark II or E or the S1R Mark II. It's just an absolute bulletproof camera. It's sort of very reminiscent of the full-frame GH5 in many ways in terms of its robustness. Is that even a word? Anyway, where the S9 really shines is if you're looking for something smaller and lighter with a full-frame sensor that you want as an everyday carry camera. This is a great content creation machine as well. I use this for reviews out in the field when it's not too hot, obviously, and I use it in the studio as a B cam, but I know that if I hook it up to power and I'm running the HDMI out into an external monitor, that it has more potential to overheat. But if I'm not doing that and just using the battery, I can let this run until the battery dies. This is a great camera for someone wanting something smaller and lighter that will give you all the same great image quality as the S5 Mark II or X. Now, this doesn't have the all-intra codecs and all that sort of fancy stuff, but it gives you the same end result as the S5 Mark II, which is indistinguishable for all intents and purposes from the S5 Mark II X. But this has a few advantages over the X, and I'll talk about that now. So this has the latest autofocus system, thanks to, I think, a slightly modified sensor or something like that. So if you're shooting in the S and Q mode on this camera up to 1080p at 100 frames per second, you're getting proper phase detection autofocus, and it works beautifully. So yeah, this has some autofocus advantages over the S5 Mark II and X. I really thought they'd upgrade the older cameras with the same autofocus system as this, but it must be a hardware limitation. It's a bit of a shame. So I sort of see this as a great short-form content camera, someone who's looking for a B cam to something like the S5 Mark II or X, or something where you want to just take it with you traveling and you want amazing results. I took this to Hawaii last year when I went there, and the end result looked absolutely stunning. I actually shot my S5 Mark IIX long-term review using this as a main outdoor camera, and it did great. It didn't overheat there either. It was about 26 degrees Celsius at the time when I shot that video, but it just continued to work, which was said a lot about this camera. I think these are completely underrated. I know they got a lot of sort of negative press from some YouTubers at the time of launch, but if you like a lot of what the S5 Mark II can do, this is a smaller version of that, but you've got to kind of work within its limitations, although it also has more strengths when it comes to its autofocus performance. The second part of Peter's question here asks whether or not the S5 Mark IIX would work well with the DJI Mic 2 or the S9. So both cameras have a 3.5mm input socket. If that particular receiver that's receiving the signal from the clip-on microphone has a 3.5mm audio output and a little cable that goes into a camera, then yes, it'll work. It won't have any problems. I haven't used that one. It's one of the few that I haven't tested, but just check the manual and the rundown of all the items included with it. And if you already own it, you'll know whether or not it comes with a 3.5mm cable. And if it does, you're in business. The second question is about the Lumix S9. It's from More Arcade Matt. I'll have to check out your channel, Matt. So I like that name. He says, my stupid S9 is overheating and shutting off under 30 minutes, whether it's 4K 30 or even 1080p 30, indoors, 78 degrees, and I'm even using a dummy battery. How is everyone else getting these crazy long record times? Before I show you the setting in the camera that you need to change to get better and longer record times, I'm going to talk about a few different use cases to be aware of with this camera. So the way that I run this camera is shooting 4K at 25 frames per second, or if I'm overseas in North America, Japan, or whatever, I'd be shooting 30 frames per second. And I've let this camera run until the battery dies. So that's the first thing. I've had no problems recommending this in terms of just a tripod setup indoors, even up to 78 degrees. But you need to be aware of a few things. So if you're running this out to an external monitor, it's going to increase the thermal temperature of the camera where it has more potential to shut down. So that's the first thing. The dummy battery idea will definitely help, but I just plonked this on a tripod here in the studio and I can let 4K 25 or 30p run as long as I like. Now I'm going to show you where this setting is. So if you turn the camera on and you go into the wrench icon menu, go into the monitor display options and go into video record limit and turn this to off. What this option says on screen here is that the recording can be continued until the camera temperature rises. After the recording is stopped, some of the functions cannot be used until the camera cools down. So this essentially means now you're going to be able to have a higher threshold at which the camera will overheat at, and this is what you want it on. Just know if you're using this outside on a really hot day in direct sunlight, it's going to overheat a lot sooner than it will on an overcast day, where I've never had it overheat on an overcast day, which is great. Different frame rates and resolutions can make this overheat sooner. 4K 30 shouldn't be an issue whatsoever running it in a studio, even at 78 degrees. So unless there's some other configuration that's going on here, I tip in that you just need to turn on this menu option on the camera. Over to a question about the lens I'm shooting with right now. This is the Sony 35mm t1.4 prime lens, the Vision Prime lens, and this is from Combat Cameraman. He says, how would I compare the quality of these lenses to the more expensive Cine lenses like Zeiss, Cooke, Sigma, Primes, etc.? Is there a noticeable difference, or if it's properly shot, graded, etc., a minimal difference? I would say the difference is probably less than you might think. There's this scale, and you probably heard it a million times. It's called the law of diminishing returns, where unless you're shooting maybe with a super high resolution sensor, you're not going to see a massive difference in the overall end result. Now, where these lenses do vary is some will have less vignetting than others, some will be sharper across the board. The bokeh quality might be way better on a way more expensive lens, and it might be less susceptible to flaring. But it would be a really interesting test, and the reason I wanted to put this in is because I can't really answer this question not testing all of those other lenses. But what I can tell you from just my research looking at a lot of Cine lenses is that these hold up really well with consumer grade cameras. I think if you're shooting maybe 12K, you might notice a difference. But yeah, if you're just shooting with consumer grade stuff, I don't think there's going to be a massive difference. You could spend $4,000 on a lens, you could spend $2,000 or $1,000 or even $800 and still get very comparable results when it comes to shooting video. Another trade-off with less expensive lenses sometimes is that they can suffer from more chromatic aberration, and this lens is a good example of that. This is the Sony Nightwalker 24mm t1.2. If I've got my lights on in the background and I'm shooting here in the studio, I'll notice a green tinge around the lights when I'm using this particular lens, and much more expensive lenses won't suffer from that exact sort of issue. So yeah, I mean, maybe they will. Maybe if they're old vintage lenses, they will, right? So you've kind of got to weigh up what kind of look you're going for. And not all Cine lenses have the Cine look. Some are super clinical as well, right? So there's a mix of stuff out there. At the end of the day, if you can frame your shot well, like you were saying, and the content or the video or the movie or the short film is good, nobody cares. And I'm going to put this into context. So some of my favorite movies of all time have beautiful cinematography. They're shot with a zoom lens with lots of chroma and they look great. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about the clinical look. Just get out there and start shooting. I think that's the most important takeaway. This next question is one I see come up a lot, and I saw it again today, and I thought I'm definitely going to reply to this. And this is from, I think, Diver Small Films, maybe, or something like that. He asks, how can I tell which Panasonic 12-35 lens is which version, essentially? So there's 3 versions. I have 2 of them. So the 12-35 millimeter Leica is identifiable thanks to the 12-35 being in yellow. And if we also take a look at the lens elements here, it says Leica across the top. So the Leica version is version 3. There seems to be some confusion about this. If you see somebody or hear someone say version 3, they're talking about the Leica. If they are talking about the Leica, it's the one here with the yellow font across the front. Version 2 looks exactly the same as version 3, but with the 2 differences being that the font on the Leica is yellow, whereas the font on version 2 is the same color as the rest of the text on the lens. And if you take a look at the lens element here, it also says Lumix G on the front. While I don't own version 1, I've watched plenty of videos on them. One of my favorite ones of all time was from Max Yuriev with Jordan Drake back in the day, testing version 1 versus version 2. And you can see from the still shot on screen that it looks vastly different to both of these two. So version 2 and version 3 are very similar. Version 3 being the Leica branded one, version 2 being exactly the same aesthetically to version 3, but yeah, it just has the standard text on there. Now, if you're on the fence deciding between both of these, they're both excellent lenses. If you're going to be in situations where you don't want to get anything too expensive damaged, then I would take version 2. And if you are in a situation where you're happy taking version 3, this is a great lens. I was lucky enough to score both of these for the same price a few years apart. This was on sale recently and I picked it up. And the 12-35 I bought back when I went to Hawaii for the first time, and it's a great lens. It's one of my favorites, and I don't plan on moving this on. There's something to be said about small zoom lenses for micro four thirds, and I think these two are some of the best. While there are faster lenses for the system, like 10-25mm f1.7 and the 25-50mm f1.7, these are super small, man. I love the look of the Leica one. It does have a more premium look. The minimum focus is slightly better, and all the stuff I've covered on my reviews, but essentially, that's the difference between them. I would recommend either version 2 or version 3, but if you can find version 1 for a bargain and it's in good condition, go for it. This next question is from Sandro Biagioni, 12. He says, congratulations on the video. Hey, thank you. He says, I'm undecided whether to buy the FX30 or GH7. How do they behave in low light? After owning the FX30 and also the GH7, they're both very similar when it comes to its noise floor above or at 4000. The Sony FX30 has a slight edge because of the dual native ISO system. You get very clean low light performance at 3200, which I think is fine. You know, 12800 on the larger sensor cameras like the FX3 or the ZV-E1 is great if you need it, but if you don't, you know, most people don't need to ramp their ISO up past about 4000, and that's pretty much the maximum for the GH7 that I would feel comfortable using. Now, as a hack for both this camera and the FX30, the hack is to buy a really fast lens. So on this GH7, I'm currently shooting with the Sirui 24mm t1.2 lens, and this allows me to shoot 4K 120 frames per second in the studio, or 100p because I'm in Australia, with no noise. It's great. The ISO is about 400 with the same studio lighting that you see right now. So that's the first thing. If you can get a really fast lens for either two cameras, you'll be working within their sweet spot and they'll both give you excellent results. I was shooting with an f1.4 lens on the FX30 a lot of the time, and I thought it was fine. You know, 3200 as a second native dual ISO is perfect. It's more usable. You don't have to worry about like cranking it right up to get clean images. It's for most shooting scenarios, it's fine. It might look like I've got a lot of light on in here. I don't at all. There's a light on about 2% over here and another one on about 3% over there. And that's it. And I can make it work in the studio and outside. Again, I did a full A/B comparison between the Sony FX30 and the GH7, and they both perform about the same past ISO 4000. There's a difference in the noise floor and how it looks and all that kind of stuff. But the GH7 is definitely a great low light camera to a point, but I would say keep the ISO as low as you can and run a faster lens and you'll get even better results. And, you know, I haven't been in a situation yet where this T1.2 lens isn't fast enough. It really is a pleasure to pair with this camera. So at the end of the day, they're both very similar. I give the slight edge to the FX30 because of that dual native ISO. So for that particular setting, it may look a little bit cleaner. But the GH7 looked great in all of my tests in an A/B comparison up to about the same ISO range. So it's a much of a muchness. I think this new sensor in here and the G9 Mark II are really quite great at keeping the noise floor down. Whether that's noise reduction in camera or not, I'm not too sure. But yeah, I can use this comfortably up to about 4,000. Anywhere beyond that, I feel like it's a little bit noisy. And same with the FX30. Thank you everyone again for all the support and comments on the channel. I really appreciate it. I want to give Matt a shout out who did a super chat or a super thanks of $25 US. It's like 150 Australian dollars. So, hey, thank you so much, Matt. I really do appreciate it. It was so nice of you to do that. And yeah, if you have any questions, anybody for the next Q&A, leave them below, or I'll keep an eye out for all the comments and questions on my feed. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, you can find this entire playlist, which will be added to each week from now, in the podcast playlist. So yeah, I'll put that somewhere on screen or in the description. Anyway, guys, thank you again. If you have any questions about anything I covered in this video, you can always leave them below as well. Thanks again. Catch you soon. See ya.